So yes, what we say as pond fish feed manufacturers is we make a sort of a winter fish food and a fish food for the rest of the year. And that winter fish food is based around wheat germ. And the idea with feeding fish wheat germ is that it's very easy for the fish to digest. It's a protein source that's really very simple. The fish's digestive system is able to break it down and it gets some energy from that protein very effectively. We think with us mammals, with us humans, we get our energy from carbohydrates, not so with fish. They tend to get their energy more from proteins and to a lesser extent from fats. So we need to be supplying those fish with a protein source that's really easy to digest in cold water, because for a fish in cold water, the digestive system isn't working as efficiently. So we feed a wheat germ food in the winter when temperatures are below 10 degrees C, because it's a protein source that's so much easier for the fish to digest. The argument then follows, well, if it's easier for the fish to digest, why don't we just feed wheat germ protein to the fish all year round? Well, when the fish are in warmer water and they're then growing more, then they're needing a complete protein. They're needing a protein that's supplying all the essential amino acids they need for growth. And wheat germ is not a complete protein for the fish. It's a great energy source to get them through a period where growth is minimal, virtually no growth at all. They just need an energy source to get them through this cold winter.
I guess you could say it's like a great booster.
Yeah. And you'll see in a lot of books and things will be saying, don't feed your fish in winter. Well, almost they're not explicitly saying don't feed your fish in winter, but they're saying in spring, start feeding your pond fish again. So that implies don't feed them in the winter. Well, that's not a good position to be in, because fish will still eat if there's food available. There's plenty of studies looking at feeding on fish farms in carp and goldfish and things, reporting that the fish have still got big, intestines full of food down to about 4 degrees C. So the fish often will still feed if there's food available, and as long as there's some oxygen in the water. And the water temperature is not sort of switching off their feeding response. It might be changing how much they eat and how efficiently they can digest it, but it's not saying below 10 degrees C, I don't want to eat anymore. So the fish are still likely to be seeking food. If the pond keeper isn't offering them anything, then they've not got anything to eat. So they're then they still have an energetic requirement. They're still swimming around in the water, albeit sluggishly, and they're still respiring. They still need some energy. So in the absence of any food, you start raiding your energy reserves. So you start raiding stores of glycogen in the liver and the muscle, start raiding stores of fat. And those fish are going to then be losing weight and losing condition over the winter. And then when we get to spring, and those fish have then got the most challenging time of the year for the pond keeper, which is when the water temperatures start rising again. Winding everything down is fairly easy. Ramping everything back up again is much, much harder. And then the fish have got to do that in the face of increased populations of pathogens in the pond. So there's greater challenge to their immune systems. So it's much harder to do that successfully if you've depleted your energy reserves.
Yeah, it doesn't seem particularly kind, does it, either, to not feed in winter?
We're just not very good at relating to what's going on in the pond. We're warm-blooded creatures, and we look down at the pond and we don't see much action, and we think, oh, well, it's freezing cold, they're cold-blooded, they must be, hibernating, I'll start feeding them, it warms up again.
So you think maybe there's that quite common misunderstanding that fish are hibernating rather than when they're not.
Okay. Fish can't. Hibernation is done by endotherms, warm-blooded creatures. So it's primarily done by mammals, and it sees the mammal then will not voluntarily. They don't. A bear doesn't decide, right now I'm going to lower my body temperature, but it happens involuntarily due to environmental cues. But the animal is lowering its body temperature itself. The fish has got no control, certainly the carp or goldfish has got no control over its temperature. It assumes it conforms to the temperature of the water it's in. And if the water temperature changes, then the fish body temperature changes and its physiology will concomitantly change as well. And we see some quite profound changes going on in the body of the fish as they go, as the temperature declines. We'll see things like, the heart rate decreasing, heart stroke volume and things decreasing, brain activity will decrease, swimming activity will decrease. So there is still some changes going on in the fish, but that's all dictated by the temperature, and the fish has got no sort of internal control over it. For a warm-blooded animal going into hibernation, it's a sort of hormonal cascade will kick in, which will then lead to a series of physiological events, which leads to the animal lowering its body temperature, and lots of other physiological changes as well. So fish emphatically don't hibernate. They might go into a torpor, as this inactivity, which is brought about by the decline in environmental temperature, but that is not hibernation. Hibernation is a very discrete physiological series of events in warm-blooded animals.